Today we have on the show Dr. Areli Ocampo. Dr. Areli is a neuropathologist, and also, Dr. Areli, you have been on a certain lifestyle. You've adopted a raw vegan lifestyle in the past years. And also you have a YouTube channel called Raw Vegan Doctor. What got you started? You've been on here before, but for those people who haven't seen those videos, first off, what's your background as far as how did you get involved with you're not really involved with medicine so much as a pathologist. You don't get involved with the prescribing of drugs, do you?
No, I don't, thankfully. But yeah, I guess I can tie my story in raw foods along with my story in medicine and my personal life health journey, if you want to. I mean, and I'll try to be brief. I went to medical school. I'm from Mexico originally. So in Mexico, you do 6 years of medical school right after high school. You don't go to college. We don't waste 4 years of our lives, right? Like directly straight from high school to university. So when I was growing up, so many things in my family members that got sick made me probably subconscious or maybe choose this career subconsciously, maybe because all the problems of my grandmothers and my mom. And I decided to go into medicine. So when I started going into medicine, I just said, okay, when I'm going to go to the good stuff, because the basic sciences you learn biology, biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, basic sciences. And then I was like, okay, when I'm going to learn the good stuff, when I'm going to learn to cure people, right? Because that's where you go, or the reason why you go to medical schools to help people. So when I went to my clinical rotations, I realized that the only thing that the Western medicine was focusing on is to patch people, to kind of like go into the mechanic, right? People being the cars, we being the mechanics, and just like a tire rotation or oil change or things like that. And I was like, but where is the things that I was supposed to learn to help people? This is more like a factory, okay, next. So I didn't sign up for this. So that led me I was disappointed. And that led me to choose a career path that was not conventional, not gynecologist, no pediatrician. I was more like, okay, I'm already 4 years in. This is no joke. I've been invested all my youth. And I said, something that doesn't harm people and something that, gives me an incentive to work on this. And I choose something that is like behind the scenes, and that's pathology. So we get tissues and biopsies, and we do the autopsies, and we determine cause of death. We make diagnosis based on the anatomical changes in the tissues. So I said, okay, this is a perfect fit for me. So I don't have to deal with pharmaceuticals. I don't have to deal with insurances and all of that. At the same time, I went in my internship. We have mandatory internship in Mexico. You live in the hospital for a year, and it's very abusive system where they exploit medical students basically because you work like long night shifts and your salary is nothing, So we are basically cheap labor, and we run the hospital with our shifts. So I gained lots of weight because of that horrible dynamics that I had, non-sleeping, eating late at night just to keep going. So when I reached my 6th year of medical education, I went to the social service because you pay back to society because still medical school is free in public school in Mexico. So I had to pay back by going to an underserved area to serve the community. So over there, I realized that, okay, there is a colleague of mine that gave me the Atkins diet just to lose the weight that I gained in my internship. And that gave me perspective about how diet influences the way we feel, the way we look. And that opened like a path for me to explore more on my own. I became very interested because the Atkins diet made me lose the weight that I gained. But I was always relying on coffee because, as you know, Atkins diet is kind of like a old version of the paleo diet, which is just animal products 3 times a day. And I was, I became interested in vegetarianism. And this interest, made different YouTube videos pop up about raw veganism, juicing, and all of that. And, on my own, I was researching all these people and what are your sources, because I don't rely on what a YouTuber says, like, okay, what are your sources? And I learn from their sources. And the more I became interested in that, I, learned about the history of medicine and all of that, and I was like, okay, this is what I was looking for when I was a medical student going into those clinical rotations. I wanted
to heal people, to actually
Yes,
heal people.
Exactly. And I was like, I already chose pathology. I already was in my residency in Mexico doing pathology. And I always wanted to move to the States to practice medicine because I thought that it will be like, okay, I want to go to the Mecca of medicine because all my textbooks and authors that I was learning from were Americans, or the language that I learned medicine from was written in English for the most part. So I was like, okay, I want to go. I always been like that, like I want to go to the source, to the origins. So I, along the way, studying for my exams to kind of like validate all my subjects, kind of like to meet all the credentials. I was at the same time doing residency in pathology, practicing vegetarianism on myself. I wasn't vegan yet, but, learning along the way. And I was fortunate to be accepted here in the States in residency. So I've been here since 2012. And, when I discovered these things, I was like, okay, one day, I will be able to coach people on natural hygiene principles and things that actually work. But meanwhile, because I'm on a work visa, I cannot receive an income out of other sources. So I cannot, like, people ask me, like, why don't you start coaching? Like, you will be very successful. I said, I can, my priority first is to get here my residency. Eventually, I will switch to what really helps people. But meanwhile, it doesn't stop me from creating content on social media and at least orienting people to put them in the right path. And then it's a personal, responsibility that everybody has to take to really learn more about this and learn about your body. Like, medicine doesn't teach you to be empowered about your own health. You always have to rely on, the doctor's opinion and, they know more than me, when in reality, you should be your first doctor. You should know yourself.
Right.
So that's, in a nutshell, everything combined in my life to be at this point.
Right. But you already had the insight back when you were just on a standard diet that you realized there was something amiss or remiss with medicine, right? It's just dealing with symptoms and cutting things out, not addressing the real cause, which is always going to be diet and lifestyle.
Of course. And when I was looking at, in the social service, you get to see the diabetics clinics. You have clinics, the hypertensive people, the diabetic people and all that. And the government is very good at keeping people in the same situation because it's more like, okay, let's give them a little bit of like candy or like a bread and circus, like they go to their appointments, they get points and they get a salary out of coming to their appointments, but they don't change their lifestyle. They don't pay attention to what you have to say. I mean, it's not that we don't, as conventional doctors, we are not supposed to teach them how to eat properly. We do, but people don't pay attention and they are rather there for the incentives of, going to the clinics, going to their appointments, getting the points, getting all this, how do you call it in America, where you have like coupons to go to stores and you exchange for food stamps, things like that. So people are comfortable being miserable and being mediocre, So I learned I cannot deal with this, but I didn't know anything better before because never in my life I thought that diet could play like a crucial role in our health.
Right.
Yeah.
And people are conditioned to be that way because this is all we're exposed to. This is the health system that we have, which was hijacked by Rockefeller 110 years ago, John D. Rockefeller, the history. And so it's a multi-generational indoctrination. And there is this idol worship as well with the medical profession. People aren't educated to be their own advocate, right? We are conditioned to kind of surrender our own responsibility to people in, the professionals, and expect that I've gotten criticism, when I became so outspoken about things that have been happening. People have criticized, Mark, your ego is really getting out of hand. These people study their whole lives. No, they haven't. No, they haven't studied health. The typical MD is not studying health. Can we say that? Can I say
that? I mean, if you ask me why I'm a doctor, right?
Huh?
Sorry. If you ask me why am I a doctor or how I became a doctor, well, I enrolled in a school that is approved by all the institutions, and I got to pass all these exams that were done on book chapters that somebody else wrote, right? So that's what makes me a doctor. I learned, I memorized, I got good grades, but the things that I've learned as a raw vegan, they didn't taught me this in medical school, because some people ask me oh, you're a raw vegan doctor, where do you go to school? They think that, oh, there is, schools that prepare you for this. And no, this is just my nickname, it's catchy, raw vegan doctor. But I didn't learn this in medical school. I learned this on my own and by observing all these people that have been doing this for years, because that's science, right? People criticize, oh, where is the science? Well, observation, anecdotal experience. If you put together all this bunch of people that are eating like us, you have a good case study to make conclusions out of it, but nobody has done it.
Yeah. And natural hygiene it's old, yes. There's a lot in that whole library of study. You learned about health on your own, yes, which is not really taught in medical school. I think I'm right in saying.
No, I didn't got any nutrition education whatsoever. And the only nutrition hours that I got were probably 16 hours, my third year of medical school. And it was more about this is how the carbohydrate molecules are made of, carbon skeleton with some hydrogens and all the molecular aspects, but not necessarily, animal fat is atherogenic, or, there are different types of fats, and you can avoid animal fat. You will avoid a lot of things. Nothing like that.
Yeah. Well, I know doctors. There are doctors in my family, and there's not a lot of advice on health. And, that's by design. So you started out on this Atkins diet, which is very low carbohydrate and, we a lot of animal products. But then you realized that wasn't the way. So you went vegetarian, which you were still eating dairy, I guess, right? When you were vegetarian.
Dairy and eggs. Yeah.
So at some point you said, well, the dairy and eggs got to go, I suppose, right?
Oh, yeah. When I switched to vegetarianism, I was so happy because I was finally energized. With the Atkins diet, you're just at your basal metabolic rate. There is no emotions, there is no high or ups. It keeps you balanced, but you're always relying on caffeine for the energy because you don't have carbs.
Yeah.
So I found okay, I already been 1 year in this, but even though I reduced the weight, I'm always puffy. I'm always retaining fluids because all this salty meats, right? And I was there should be a way to eat that is not so restrictive. I was missing my fruit. I was always a fruit lover. I am from Mexico, so I used to grow out mangoes, papayas. And I'm
To not eat fruit in the tropics is madness to me.
I know. I miss my country right now. You don't value what you have until you lose it.
Oh, but, Mexico. I would, if I had my choice, I would transplant myself to Mexico in a heartbeat. Not even a question about it. But there is a problem with the cartels, right? Is that a problem in Mexico? Other places? Because I like to ride a bicycle, and I do have friends in Mexico. I really would just like to ride my bicycle through the country, but that might not be a good idea. Do you think? with certain areas?
I think as a guy, and if you're in your bike and not bothering anyone, I don't think there's a problem. I think the problem is for the people who get involved with them and the ones who challenge them. But if I have neighbors that are in those type of businesses, so it's just like, I mean, back in my family's place. So if you don't do anything to them, they're fine.
So the cartels are not going to bother somebody just passing through.
No, for sure.
So I could actually ride a bicycle through Mexico, and you think that would be okay?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good news. Because I definitely right now I'm taking care of my father, so I can't go anywhere. But at some point, I would. I'm going to go to the tropics. As you see me, I'm dressed up really warm, and
Yes.
the raw vegan diet, or the fruit-based diet's great for keeping you cool, but it's not so great for keeping you warm. And before we went on, I was going to eat after, but I started to get a little bit hungry. So I thought, well, I'll eat before. So I had zucchini noodles with tomato sauce, raw tomato sauce, and both were cold.
Yeah.
And I got such a chill. So I put this on. And I would have stood in a hot shower for a while if I had time, because it just made me really chilly. But I do tolerate the heat very well. I thrive in the heat where, most people it's always too hot for most people. And that really is the diet. That's the diet. Whereas this diet cools you down. The cooked diet heats you up, especially if you're eating animal products, it heats you up even more. So you went from Atkins to vegetarian, and then what? Did you go vegan first before you went cooked vegan, before you went raw vegan, or did you just jump right into the raw vegan?
No, yeah, my transition was very gradual, and I think that has made me stick to it because I know all the phases, and I know if I go back, I don't feel at my best. So just by incorporating fruit and veggies, and at the time grains, rice, corn, from Atkins to vegetarian, it was like a drastic change. And I was energetic, I started feeling much better and appreciating everything around me. And I was like that for 3 years, but I always had circulatory problems like varicose veins, cellulite, and things that until I quit dairy didn't resolve. Acne as well. So the reason why I went vegan is because I watched Earthlings. So I always remember the night of November 30th of 2013, I couldn't go back to, cheese and dairy because I knew the exploitation behind it after watching that documentary. So it was more like a ethical decision. But, one thing led to the other. Quitting dairy was the most difficult because, as you know, cheese and milk has like a morphine
very addictive.
Similarity to morphine. Yeah.
So and apparently that's the bond the mother with the baby or with the calf, the cow with the calf.
Yeah.
Oh, it's for me. I wanted to cry when I gave up cheese. Meat was easy for me, no problem. Yeah. Meat, but to give up cheese. And plus it's the salt too, because for me, probably the most addictive thing I've ever had to overcome was salt. Salt addiction. It's so intense. All these things are so addictive. The dairy, the starch. Starch is very, very addictive.
Yeah.
So you went vegan, cooked vegan because you saw Earthlings, which is really a horrific thing to see.
Exactly.
I watched that one too, a way back, but I had already given up animal products at that point. But I gave up animal products for health. Mm-hmm. But then when I began to realize what the suffering and exploitation is in animals, I was happy that I was no longer a part of that. And then you got into raw vegan. So by raw vegan, I think for me, I mean fruit-based. I think for you too, it's basically a fruit-based diet.
Yeah, Yeah, I would say it's probably 50-50. Like before, I was heavy on fruit, but I noticed that calories matter. So for me, in order to keep my a healthy weight, um, I like to incorporate like the savory, right? And obviously, you know that tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchini are fruits, but not so sweet fruit. I like to incorporate that as well, especially after lunchtime and dinner time. But yeah, in the morning is definitely sweet, juicy, ripe fruit all the time. Um, and then I try to do more sprouts nowadays, just because my how can I say, athletic goals. But I could easily live on fruit. So yeah, answering your question is like a high carb, low fat, raw vegan fruit based diet. What I do.
Yeah, well, when I say fruit-based, I mean that most of your calories are coming from fruit, not all your calories. I eat a lot of savory too. The reason I failed in the early days was because I thought that a raw diet was a fruit diet. I thought it was a fruitarian diet, but I could just never manage eating sweet fruit all the time.
Yeah.
And then when it sort of dawned on me, it's sort of an obvious thing now, but I said, well, I can have salads. And then I started incorporating these huge salads, green salads, and then it started to become much easier to stay on the raw lifestyle. Even to this day, maybe one sweet meal is enough for me. Then I want something savory. So today I only had fruit, but I had non-sweet fruit. I had zucchini and tomatoes and peppers. I had a zucchini pasta, which was all fruit.
Yeah.
But it's savory. So also, I had an experiment with Chronometer where I entered for a whole year. I weighed and entered everything in the Chronometer just to sort of as an experiment, as a kind of an educational experiment. And I found that the non-sweet fruit really function biologically or nutritionally like vegetables. I mean, most people would consider zucchini and tomatoes vegetables, even though they're not. We know that they're not. But nutritionally, they function as vegetables. In other words, all the holes in my nutritional profile were completely filled as soon as I added non-sweet fruit. So it's, there were gaps in the Chronometer analysis with just sweet fruit, but as soon as I added zucchini, tomatoes, peppers, suddenly everything was way over 100% RDA. So I think there's more to the desire for sweet and savory than just taste. It's nutritional needs that we're accommodating, and we have those tastes because the body directs you, doesn't it? It sort of directs you to your taste, directs you towards what your body needs. And it's interesting because I don't really set out anything I don't have I just think about what do I want to eat, and that's what I eat. If I want something sweet, I eat sweet. If I want something savory, I eat savory. But on a raw vegan diet, on a fruit-based raw vegan diet, the diet accommodates all of those tastes.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Like I've been 5 years in this lifestyle, and before that I was, high raw. But after making this commitment to my own health, not that I had to prove something to anyone. Actually, this social media thing started maybe 3-4 years ago, so it was more like a health decision. But I'm becoming more intuitive when it comes to eating, and I feel like you can only do that until you have gone through a lot of trial and error. Because obviously, if you make the argument of, well, intuitively, I want pasta right now, that's not the way it works.
No, because really, to intuitive eat, you first have to get over the addictions.
Right.
Because a craving for pasta is really an aspect of addiction. It's that starchy heaviness, that we crave. Because really through evolution, our bodies, we really are geared towards seeking out the most calorie dense food sources just for survival.
Yeah.
In a survival situation, calorie dense would be more, it would be more desirable because you were going to satiate yourself.
Yeah.
But those times in nature, you really wouldn't find that in nature, you know, and if you did, it would be the exception. But now we have all these calorie dense foods. All you have to do is walk to your refrigerator and there they are. You can have a refrigerator full of calorie dense foods. And that's what most people have in their refrigerator. So that's what they're eating all the time. And so that's where the health issues come in.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're also a runner, right? You run on a regular basis?
Yeah. I used to run more before, but because of longevity issues, I just want to keep doing it because I love it, not competitively. But yeah, I run, I would say 5K every day or maybe every other day.
You had some health issues too that resolved themselves after what? After you got on the raw diet?
Yeah, I would say that they started to dissipate when I quit dairy, when I became vegan. As I said, varicose veins, cellulite, acne, constipation, rashes in my skin. I feel like the way disease express in myself, it would be more like weight gain or skin problems. So I know that when I shouldn't have something in my diet, it's because it starts to manifest as acne or a rash. So in my case, until I quit dairy, all those problems resolved. And obviously, you know, it's not only diet, lifestyle as well. If I don't run, I used to feel heavy or I retain more fluids. But yeah, I will say that until I quit dairy. And then when I became vegan, I was more into white and gray and beige food like pasta, rice, bread, you know, things of that nature.
A lot of starch.
Yeah, starch based. And it wasn't that colorful until my kind of like high raw period, because at the end of my veganism, before transitioning into raw, I was more high raw. And then only on the weekends, that's when I had my cooked meals. But yeah, until that phase, I would say that many of my health issues resolved. And as a raw vegan, you know, it's more like my baseline. Once I deviate, because, you know, I always say that we should be transparent. You know, in these 5 years of raw veganism, I would like if I say, oh, I am 100% raw vegan. When I can control my environment, like for example, if I didn't have enough fruit one day, and if I go to Whole Foods and they have, you know, the salad bar, and they have some cooked chickpeas or some cooked edamame, nothing happens to me if I add as toppings some grilled asparagus, you know, or some grilled mushrooms, things like that.
Sure.
But other than that, you know, I would say like all these 5 years, even as a 99% raw vegan, if you want to discount that 1% that when occasionally I have something cooked,
Yeah.
I'm very selective about my cook choices, and it will be only steamed or baked veggies and occasionally some quinoa, you know, but nothing fried or things that are damaging, like
yeah, I
pasta.
mean, all cooked food is
pasta.
not the same. I think, you know, we
Right.
have to watch, we have to be careful of being cultish, you know. You don't want to be cultish. And I hate to say it, but I notice that sometimes it becomes like a cult, like, you know, oh, cooked food, you know, the cross, take the cross out. Yeah, I mean, because all cooked food is not the same. You know, everybody in the movement, people talk about cooked food like it's just so bad, but it's different levels. You know, a baked potato or a boiled potato is not the same as a lot of things you can eat. And that's why I wanted to differentiate between raw vegan and fruit-based, because you could be raw vegan and really still be eating a lot of junk, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all these desserts, right? Like cashew-based cheeses and all of that.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, you know, the heavy stuff, the raw gourmet stuff, which in Los Angeles, I got involved with that for a while. And it was really frustrating. I was far healthier being high raw, eating some cooked vegetables and potatoes, far better off than eating all this raw gourmet stuff. So yeah, people have to realize, and I gave a talk one time on Ronnie's Fruit Friday thing, and somebody asked me if I was 100% raw, and I had to say no, because I'm like you. Like, if I cook broccoli for my father, maybe I'll steam it and maybe I'll just have a little bit, or if I have banana ice cream and there's maple syrup in the refrigerator. My father used to eat maple syrup. So if there was maple syrup in the refrigerator, I'd maybe pour some on my ice cream. But I think that's really insignificant in the grand scheme. That's not really going to matter too much, because it like I said, it's all cooked food is not the same. And plus the amount that you're doing it. I don't know if I want to say we have to be flexible, but we are in a cooked world, and like you said, you have to weigh it. It's like Doug Graham said, it's the things that you do every day that matter, not the things that you do occasionally, And also, again, all cooked food is not the same. Steamed broccoli is not going to be the same as
French fries.
French fries, yeah.
Right.
Because then you have the other end of the spectrum where people are vegan just for ethical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's their only reason. Like the idea of health doesn't even enter their mind. So they're eating all kinds of junk. What about supplements? How do you feel about that? Do you take any supplements, or what's your idea about supplements?
I feel like, as raw vegans, we need B12 supplementation. Some people argue about it like, it's been 10 years and I haven't had any B12 supplementation. Well, that's just an isolated person, right? And I know so many vegans and raw vegans that approach me, even though I don't do consultations, but sometimes, if you can help someone with a piece of information, I'll do it. And I just say, you know what, those are B12 deficiency symptoms. Like they say, oh, I'm having nervousness, I'm having tingling in my fingers, or I am, I don't feel like my memory is as sharp as before, or I'm depressed. And I said, have you had any B12s? And they said, no, I neglect that, or I don't take it. I don't believe in supplements, because there is also this, dogmatic approach where anything that is not natural should probably is harmful, especially if it comes as a pill or some formulation. But I feel like B12, even though not everyone develops deficiencies, I wouldn't play, as with that particular nutrient. So I feel like all of us should supplement, not all the time. If you really want to know if you're deficient, do a urine test or a blood test or a combination of both to really know where you are. But that will be my main supplementation. Vitamin D, if you are in cold climates, Don Bennett says that, no, that's not, but I feel like it's better than nothing, because even allopathic studies have shown that people who had vitamin D deficiency were the ones who were more susceptible to see, the bug that was, that has been the topic of conversation over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So I feel like we are. Yeah.
I think vitamin D is necessary for detoxification.
Okay.
I notice myself, I'm more prone to certain things in the wintertime that don't even affect me in the summer. It's almost like I have to be stricter in the winter.
Me
like
too. I do my D
something.
Supplementation.
What's that?
I know that I get colds if I'm low in vitamin D during winter time. So I just take it.
So you take vitamin D in the winter?
Yes.
So weren't you in Louisiana before? Was it Louisiana?
Yeah, I've been here for 2 years right now. Yeah.
Louisiana.
But before, yeah. And it's in the northern part, not in New Orleans. I'm close to Arkansas, actually.
Okay, so it gets chilly there too.
Oh yeah. Like right now we are in the 50s.
The 50s, yeah, that's where we were today, because it got up to about it's been a mild winter here, but 50 is cold. But for wintertime here, it's actually not that bad. I was out in the yard barefoot doing some things, so it's It's not too bad. And
No.
I do bike rides here, always. I'm bike riding to encourage people. This type of diet is really next level for health. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, of course. And, it's like this is the baseline that I have, which is feeling good 24/7. And we were talking about not being dogmatic, right? And to a certain extent, you don't want to use the word flexible, but if I flex too much when it comes to knowing my threshold in terms of incorporating more cooked food, I know that it drains my energy. I know that probably my joints will not feel as free of pain, the next day. So I know that this keeps me at my baseline, which is well-being 24/7 and energy levels 24/7. I don't do coffee anymore, so it's just like I don't compromise feeling at my best by just having some temptation. And you learn that with trial and error. You kind of have the feedback that you need when you fall or when you abuse your body to a certain way. And then you just move on and learn, and you don't do it again. But it's a muscle that you have to exercise, and it's next level, as you said. I feel like veganism is great, especially if you focus on whole food, plant-based diet. But raw veganism, I mean, as I said, my transition has been gradual, and probably that made me stick to this because I know the comparison, right? Like day and night, the way I feel.
Yeah, my transition was really gradual too. I started when I was 15, actually.
Oh.
Well, on the path, on this journey. And the first thing I did when I was 15 is I gave up all processed foods. So that was that. It was only whole food. I was still eating animal products, blah, blah, blah. And that led all the way up to when I was about 21. A friend of mine had gotten cancer, so he got into the macrobiotic diet. And that's when even before that, I gave up red meat. So I went from no processed foods. Then I gave up red meat when I was around 20. And then when I was 21, macrobiotic diet. And that was when I eliminated dairy. And that was really hard. That was, my father would taunt me. He would eat pizzas in front of me like, you want this, don't you? And I did. That was really, I mean, do you think maybe pizza's got to be the most addicting thing that there is? I mean, it's got everything: starch, cheese, salt, it's savory with the tomato sauce. Oh my God. Yeah. Even now I would like to have pizza, but like Chris Kendall's really good with the raw vegan pizzas. It's pretty amazing. But I think really the component that is, because like I said, even you go raw vegan, you could still eat things that are a lot less than optimal, which is why I did have a dehydrator and I got rid of it at some point because I said, I don't want to get involved with all this dehydration because the critical component, really, one of the main critical components is water. It's the high water content foods, which are so easily digestible, they just make you feel just a state of well-being that you've never experienced before. And I'm in my 60s now, and it's never ending. It just seems like it only gets better. And it also from a spiritual standpoint too, right? What's your experience with that?
Oh yeah. I was raised Christian, and the level of awareness and spirituality that I've acquired in my raw veganism, it's probably I've evolved more because of my diet. I don't know if because of my state of mind. I don't know if because we are supposed to vibrate at that frequency, of electric food. I don't know what it is, but I would say that I feel more spiritually connected than just being in a, conventional religion, whether it's Christianity or, Catholicism, whatever. I just feel like there is more connection, not only, with my body, but also with the whole cosmos, just walking in the forest and having this sense of connection with nature and just being in awe by, oh my God, that leaf is moving up there. It's like my sense of awareness and amusement by the simple things is hidden by this diet, I think.
Well, it is far more in harmony with nature, right?
Yeah.
Because, people should know, we're not just following some kind of fad or some kind of way of life. It is a way of life, but it really is our natural biological diet. A diet which is, because, right? I mean, humans are the only species on the planet that even cooks. So the cooking is denaturing a lot of things. It's caramelizing carbohydrates. It's denaturing proteins.
Yeah.
It's creating. It's the food is in a form which is just not natural for the consumption of a living organism.
Yeah. I feel like it puts you on a state that we were supposed to be from the beginning. Like all this sick, being sick, all these diseases, it's just a byproduct, right, of humanity deviating from the natural way of eating. And it's not only at the physical level, right, the repercussions, but it's also at the spiritual level. I mean, just leaving alone the poor animals, that takes a lot of violence out of your being, So
Yeah. And,
yeah.
that fear vibration, when those animals are going to be slaughtered, they're full of fear. And somehow that vibration must translate over to the person who's consuming that. Not only that, these animals are diseased. It's not like when Indians were running around this country and they would hunt. Sure, the animal was still filled with fear, but I mean, these animals are really unhealthy, really unhappy, depressed lives, depraved kind of conditions. And the animals are diseased even. I mean, these animals slaughtered, a lot of the animals themselves are not on their natural diet, and they're pumped with antibiotics and this type of thing. It's not really the best conditions. So all of these things, and just the karma of that, that of partaking in that, it has to take its toll over time, consuming that kind of diet.
Yeah, I mean, we see it every day. Like right now, it's Sunday, but I just came to work to kind of ease out a little bit the workload that I have sitting on my desk because I have so many cases. But it's just like, as I said, as a factory, like next, the next folder is probably a papillary thyroid carcinoma. The next folder is probably colon cancer. The next folder is going to be. So this is, these are the consequences of years of abuse to the body. And yeah, I mean, just by having the awareness of your diet, it really opens the door for having the awareness to so many other things. But yeah, I don't know what has to happen so people wake up.
Well, it's so when our species migrated from the tropics, that's really where it all began, because now the diet shifted from a natural biological diet of fruit. And there's plenty of evidence that our ancient ancestors, before migrating from the tropics, were fruit eaters. That's it. We are primates, we're anthropoid apes. And when you look at our cousins, the apes in the wild, our cousins, the bonobo, we share more DNA with the bonobo ape than the bonobo shares with the chimpanzee. We're closer to the bonobo than the bonobo is to the chimp. So, these animals are basically fruit eaters. They're frugivores. And but once we left the tropical forest, then the diet shifted from a natural biological diet to more of a survival type diet, like, eat what you could find that you could possibly eat. And then when we discovered fire, it took to the next level. And then because then you could eat more unnatural things, right? Because fire, when you cook something, it enables you to eat things that are either entirely inedible or disgusting. right? There's certain things would just be disgusting if they weren't cooked, like escargot. These are snails. Now it's like a gourmet dish. I mean, if you saw a snail, there's no way anybody's going to pick up a snail and just eat that. It would just be so disgusting. So many things are that way. Or even say rice, a pound of rice uncooked. You're not going to do it. So it's making things. So what fire does, or what heat does, when you process something at a high temperature, it makes inedible things edible. Actually, what it does is it makes it more like fruit, right? Because it softens it. Like if you take rice, for instance, it's making it soft. It's because we're designed to eat ripe fruit and tender leaves, things that are soft. So that's what heat does. So you factor that in, and then at some point we got into agriculture. So we no longer were hunter-gatherers. Well, then the hunting aspect too, which we're not carnivores because we would have had to develop tools in order to hunt.
Yeah.
So all these things we did for survival, but then, we got into agriculture, which made our lives a lot easier. And then we migrated north, all of these things where, you had to hunt or you had to grow food and stock it up. All of these things happen really because we left our natural habitat, because every animal has a natural diet in its natural habitat. And then, from that, we started to develop, we were humans, so we're creative. We got into all this culinary arts and all the different cuisines and everything. We got led astray and we left the Garden of Eden, basically. But on top of that, these things are very addicting. So even when you have certain realizations like we have, then it's overcoming all this addiction that you had from the time you were, a little kid. It's not an easy path, but once you understand that this is the way, you sort of you're determined to do it. That's how I was. It's prana, right? You're getting this prana not denatured or degraded by heat.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you say prana, do you believe in the so-called breatharians, or do you think that they're just good at fasting?
Well, I do believe in breatharianism, but I'm not sure if there's any breatharians walking around in an ordinary physical body. I'm not sure. I think most of them are good at fasting.
Okay.
I believe in the possibility of it. I believe in the potential of it. I think that's where we're all going eventually. Because I think that is our natural state, to get the prana directly. From the sun and from the air. Are people doing that are making YouTube videos? Or I don't know. They've done some studies. There's Prahlad Jani. They had him 10 days in a controlled environment, and he didn't eat or drink for 10 days, and none of his biology changed, and they were testing him all the time. There's someone else who claims to be a breatharian. Is Elitam Elamine. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that he's not, but it seems like he is, but I don't know.
There is another guy from Israel, Ray Maur, something like that.
Yeah.
He also had like a video. I think he lasted for 8 days, but at the end of the 8th day, he was almost collapsing because of dehydration. So, yeah, I feel like you really need to get into that habit until you can kind of sustain the same energy for a long time. In theory, I understand what you mean about like it's possible. In my case, it will be disrespectful to say that, oh no, it's not possible, right? Like a very medical dogmatic approach, because I don't know, like I didn't know that you can live off of raw vegan diet, so how can I say that you cannot live without eating, so but at this point, do I recommend it? No. Have I done it? No. Am I convinced that there's people doing it? Well, they say, but as everything, I'm gonna put my hands in the fire for those people who are making those claims. So I'm still, skeptical, but I'm not saying that it's not possible, if that makes sense.
Most of the people who have made that claim have been debunked.
Mm.
I don't think Ellie Tom has been debunked. I put it this way: I just don't know. Do I believe that breatharians exist? Yes, absolutely. I think it's a state of a certain advancement. And I think once we advance to a certain level spiritually, yeah, but that's a pretty high level.
Right.
Can you prepare your body to subsist on far less food? Yeah, I'm an example of that. I probably generally eat more than I need. I ate once a day for a year, one fruit meal a day for a year, and that was enough. And I was riding my bicycle 200 miles a week. So I could have never done that in the beginning.
Yeah, the more time goes by, I feel like the less I need, not to the point of not eating, but, before I was like in the mindset of missing out. So I was thinking, I need 2,500 calories, close to 300 calories. But now it's like, 1,800, 2,000, sometimes less during the weekend probably. But I don't want to say that because, there are some people who are like, oh my God, you're promoting an eating disorder. No, it's just, if you're not doing much during the weekend, I don't see why I need to eat 2,000 calories every single day, So, yeah, it's a lot sometimes to, you cannot please everyone, and some people can take things out of context and say, no, I'm not promoting not eating. I'm just saying the more you realize that your body's capacity to absorb and assimilate, the cleaner you get, I think it gets better.
It definitely gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And like somebody like Lauren Lockman, I mean, he's not doing the amount of physical activity that I'm doing. Well, I do a lot less in the winter. I don't really like the cold weather, especially as a bike rider. It's easier as a runner, but when you're on the bike, you get that wind,
Yeah.
But Lauren is eating about 1,200 calories a day on average. So he's fasted. And there's also another fruit based person. I forget his name now, but he eats once a day. But him and Lauren have done more fasting than anybody I can think of. I think Lauren has fasted about 3 years of his life.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if you add the days up that he's fasted, it would be about 3 years. So what about that fasting? Have you thought about that at all?
Well, I feel like there's indications, right? Like, I feel like if you just want to do it for the sense of, I want to cleanse, or I need to feel pure, or some people do it for the religious aspect, like, I have to last 40 days like Jesus, I feel like when there's ego involved and just to prove yourself to others without unnecessary, like an indication, that's when people fail. And we have plenty of examples in the raw vegan YouTuber influencer community where you see all these big names in the past and they did an unnecessary fast and everything went down south, like right after that episode that they had. So, and they blame the diet. So I don't feel like it's indicated, especially for young people who have nothing to correct. But yeah, there's clinics like True North, for example, in Santa Rosa. There is another clinic in Germany. I forgot the name, but they bring people with chronic conditions and they do water fast and they heal those conditions and they publish the results. So we are not talking about something unscientific. They've been published, the studies have been published that yes, fasting really, you can starve the C word in certain instances. So yeah, I feel like with indications, when it's necessary, it's very therapeutical. But again, I feel like not many people have to do it, especially I feel like you can, like Lauren, right? Or yourself, like your body's so good at acquiring the nutrition and your needs from a fruit-based diet for a long time. You've been doing this, that 2, 3, 7 days of not eating, it's not going to do anything for you because your tissues are already clean. But people who are just coming here, I feel like they need to let the old microbiome die. They need to regenerate their tissue so they can endure this level of simplicity. But yeah, I feel like it's not like a black and white answer, but people under supervision can find great benefits as a therapeutical intervention. Yeah.
You said another really important thing, and then I'll let you go after that. But the microbiome, that's really the key of all this, isn't it? It's one of the major components and benefits of this diet is the microbiome. So what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, the more you eat, the cleaner you eat, the simpler you eat, your microbiome that craves the bad stuff dies off. So because when you're having a lot of cravings, and if you do, let's say like a juice fast for a week or something, once you return to eating solids, you no longer have those cravings. And that's because the bad microbiome, right? Like the bugs that are craving the pizza, the bugs that are craving the burger, you let them die off. And therefore, it's not you, when you're having those cravings. Sometimes it's even emotions that you thought that, it's not that important. Yeah, actually, those microorganisms are the ones in charge of secreting serotonin and all these hormones, feeling good hormones. And some people, are depressed because they have a very bad microbiome. There's a lot of research about it. There is a paper where they link almost every neurodegenerative diseases to a bad microbiome. And there is studies showing that people who have Parkinson's disease, when they get a fecal transplant of healthy patients, or in this case, it was mice, I think, the Parkinson's mice correct their symptoms just by having different fecal matter.
Amazing.
So it's, yeah.
For me, it's just I think my microbiome is probably the best it's ever been in my life. And it's directly attributed to the diet. I think that the fruits and vegetables create by far the best microbiome. And I think a lot of my joy and, from a spiritual standpoint, that feeling of well-being and joy, and not like I'm never sad, but it's just, you're just in this harmonious state, a far more harmonious state than you were before this kind of diet.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's my experience as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Areli. Thanks for coming on again. And this is great. I hope you could spread this out to in your profession. I know that people are really set in their ways, though.
Yeah, or at least the people who are willing to listen, and that's through social media. We need to realize that social media is powerful. It's been driven a lot of changes recently, so better to use it for good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's our medium where we could spread this message.
Yeah.
And then, so your YouTube is Raw Vegan Doctor. Any place else that people can find you?
Yeah, I am on, I kind of monopolize that name. So I register myself in all social media platforms, but I'm active on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And Facebook is just basically like a reposting from Instagram. But yeah, you can find me everywhere at Raw Vegan Doctor.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. It's good to see you again.
Thank you, Mark. Likewise.